Introduced who we are, a little bit about what we're doing today, and Lowry and Paul and Sean and Emma and Emily do keep me to time. I'm a bit rubbish timekeeping, so yeah, please be tough with me. You can see what we're going to do. We have a couple of different breakout groups where in true Zoom style you'll sort of go off to sort of breakout rooms, and then we'll come back together and discuss what we've been chatting about. Like I said, it's a real good opportunity to have that sort of two-way conversation between you guys and the rest of us at the RSPB and Eden Project. So let's take a step back through the decades. This is me back in the 1970s, and then again in the 1980s. And then if we jump back to only sort of 30 years ago, and in 1990, I got this book. So I was 12 at the time, the Blue Peter Green book, and in it was like it was a great selection of all the different sort of actions that you could take that was like good for the planet that you could do at home. And what I'd say is probably, apart from the section that's all about CFCs and the ozone layer and things like that, everything else that's in that book is still an issue. It's still a problem, and there's still stuff that needs to be done about it. And that was 30 years ago. And I don't know about a lot of other people, but actually this goes back all the way back to the 1970s. And if you think, you know, if you guys were around then, you can remember things like Save the Whale campaigns and things like that. There's a lot of things that, you know, we've been trying to do as a nation, as a planet, over the last sort of like a few decades. Now, interestingly, what we're trying to do with the RSPB now as a project is trying to look at what are those actions that people can take at home, in their own homes, in their own communities, that they feel that they can actually take that's relevant to them, that they can then go and do. So it's good for them and good for wildlife, nature, and the planet as a whole. Now, what we don't want to do is just go over the last 30, 40 plus years of just go and banging on about the same old stuff that we've always ever done. So what do we need to think about differently? Well, I think we should all presentations have a picture of Sir David in it. And what's interesting is for those of you who managed to watch the sort of BBC Extinction programme, or even if you've got Netflix or went to the cinema, go and see the Life on Our Planet documentary. Even Sir David is like putting out there exactly the sort of things that all of us can do to take action to sort of ideally sort of halt the nature and climate crisis. So, you know, for example, in his program, he's talking about consuming less, eating less meat and dairy, reducing food waste, and kind of educating people and ideally have people having better lives and a better understanding of what the issues are. But even when you have something as inspirational as that, when you start looking at how you can actually shift people's behaviors and habits and things like that, sometimes just telling people what they should do, a bit like in 1990 with the book that I got when I was 12, just telling people what they should do doesn't necessarily mean that people end up doing what you think is the right thing to do, because we all know that, you know, if we want to lose weight or be healthier, we need to eat less and move more. We need to get off our bums. We need to eat more healthily. If you smoke, we probably all know that smoking is bad for us. Drinking too much is also bad for us, but it doesn't necessarily stop us from doing those things. So actually, what is it? What are these sort of underlying things that can actually, instead of just sharing knowledge, what are the things that we can actually do to help people start taking up new habits that they want to start doing? So that's where we started looking at, and this is where our project, our Actions for Nature project, started back in the end of March, beginning of April, so pretty much when lockdown sort of began. We decided we wanted to try and look at how we could look at getting sort of a more diverse range of people taking meaningful, impactful actions to try and tackle the nature and climate crisis. And we wanted to create a series of tools and useful hints and tips and a lot of things based on understanding why people do certain things and why people don't do certain things. And actually, for all of you that were in the last workshop that we did, it was a really sort of great opportunity to start digging into what are those barriers to stopping people doing certain things, or what the sort of benefits of actually starting up a new habit, which is actually great for you, your household, your community, and ideally, the planet as well. So that was the plan back in April. And since then, we've been sort of like trying and testing lots of new different things. And part of that, as you can see down the bottom there, is actually doing it in a lot more of a sort of participatory, audience-led approach. So actually speaking to people and saying, what is it that is relevant to you? Why do you do certain things that you like doing? Why do you struggle to do things that you think you should be doing? And trying to understand a lot more about what people are thinking. And also it was kind of an iterative process as well. So we didn't really know back in April what we needed to be doing in the autumn and winter for developing these tools until we'd spoken to good people like yourselves. So that was the plan. Back in July, God, seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? Back in July, we ran a My World Now sort of a social media campaign, trying to find out more about what people valued in their neighborhoods and around them. And we're getting lots of those things that you would have heard a lot about, such as a lot of people appreciating their local communities more, a lot of people appreciating their local green spaces more if they have them, and actually highlighting those places where you don't have green spaces and saying what the issue is there, and also having quieter roads, cleaner air, and things like that. Then in August, we kind of realized that actually what we're seeing, and a lot of the research from other organizations as well, is saying that actually a lot more people are appreciating nature and appreciating sort of how good it is for your well-being, and how important it is to have access to that sort of local green space. So started looking at that idea is nature the new normal for a lot of people who it might not have been before. So then, like I said, in August, we sort of our sort of online campaign shifted into asking people, well, what are the actions that you are already doing? And there are some people that are poised, ready to start taking action. We thought the best way to then possibly inspire them to start taking action is speaking to the good people, like a lot of you guys on this call, to start sharing their stories about what they were doing. And we got hundreds and hundreds of amazing different stories, and you can actually go and have a look at a lot of those stories on the website that we set up over the summer. So if you go and have a look at and there's a link which you can have a look at later, and the guys are going to sort of share that, so you can go and have a look. There's some really, really lovely stories on there, and you can actually, if you haven't had a chance, go and submit your own story about what you do in your home, so that again you can inspire other people to start taking action as well. So here we go. Here's some of the sort of stuff that we had through, and again a big sort of thank you to Emma and Chloe in our team for sort of like curating all these amazing stories that have come through. And we did get a real lovely mixture of different things, from sustainable living through to being creative, through to feeding the birds and doing stuff in people's gardens, a real sort of mixed bunch of different things as well. So yeah, do go and have a little look. And for those again who are at the last session we had, which was it a week 2 weeks ago, something like that, wasn't it? I'm looking at Lowry now, something like that, wasn't it? It was something like that. Is we started looking at sort of grouping all those different types of actions together, and kind of deciding, once we understand all the different things that people could be doing, what are those sort of benefits of doing those different things, but also what are those barriers that, if you're really desperate to want to start doing some of these things, what are those barriers that are stopping people doing those, and can we and other organizations help you to start doing those things, and what do you need? So that was up until a couple of weeks ago, and since then we've kind of been developing the idea and kind of looking at that idea of a sort of connectedness and interconnectedness, and that's kind of the sort of main emphasis of this call, which is why hopefully most of you are here today. And we're going to have a little look about the connectedness of the natural world, but also the connectedness of the actions, each individual action that people take. And actually, when you start looking at those collectively, around all the different actions that people take that actually could have a sort of major impact, hopefully in a positive way, towards the nature and climate crisis. So keeping that in mind, we're going to start digging into this idea of connectedness. So with that in mind, let's sort of start with the basics. And even though with the RSPB, a lot of us, a lot of people out there, including my family, let's be honest, think that we are the bird people, and we are. That's where we started. We are the people. The birds are integral part of our history and passion and everything that we do. However, hopefully a lot of you be very much aware that you can't just concentrate on one taxa of wildlife out there, that everything out there is all interconnected. Everything from looking at the trees and the plants and the fungi, all the way through to the invertebrates, all the way through to the sort of the top predators that you might have in an ecosystem as well, that everything is interconnected. So not surprisingly, and hopefully you won't be surprised, that actually as the RSPB, we don't just concentrate on birds. We talk about the whole interconnectedness of the natural world, and actually if you concentrate on one thing, actually has a knock-on effect with everything else as well. So it's kind of part of what we do on a day-to-day basis, and some of the amazing people on this call who do a lot of that conservation work on the ground, they're living and breathing this sort of approach of the sort of interconnectedness of the natural world. But what's interesting, and I think this has really come out in the pandemic, and again, some of the research, such as the guys at Hubbub and also Groundworks and some great research out there, has showed that a lot of people are now starting to realize how interconnected we all are within our local communities. And I think it just goes to show when you start looking at the key workers, for example, and some of you may be key workers, in which case I salute you, is that everyone from the delivery guy through to people who are delivering your post, through to the people who are delivering your food, through to nurses, through to anyone in the NHS, everyone, regardless of what job you do have, you don't have, actually there's a lot of people, we're all interconnected, and we kind of all rely on each other, working close together. And that's been through the pandemic. I think everyone's realized that probably more so than ever, and the importance of our neighbors and our communities. So this is where I test possibly how old I am, going back to 1970s. But some people may have heard of the 6 degrees of separation, or if you went to the pub and used to play this game, those times when you used to go to the pub, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Now, some people will look at that and go, I have no idea what you're talking about. But for those who do, you'll know that the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon is a game where you try and figure out that within 6 steps, that everybody in the world is somehow related or knows Kevin Bacon. For those who don't know, is an actor in the US. I hope you do know who Kevin Bacon is. And actually, this is really interesting because that whole idea of 6 degrees of separation within our communities actually works within the natural world as well. Because if you start thinking about that whole idea of connectedness and people's actions, it kind of works, like I said, within the sort of natural world. And that idea of like the consequences of doing one particular action and how that has a knock-on effect. So in this example, you've got, for example, somebody might buy a plastic bag, use a plastic bag in a shop. That plastic bag might then blow away, going down into a drain, travel through the sort of water system and out into the oceans, and then unfortunately might end up in the stomachs of some of our marine life. So that kind of like that idea of one particular action having a knock-on effect throughout the natural world, and actually then coming back and having a knock-on effect to us as humans. Again, that idea of like connectedness works really nicely, and that idea of connectedness works really nicely within the natural world as well. So with that in mind, this is where we're going to play a game. And you're like, oh God, really? It's a bit of a kind of like based on a kind of parlor game that a lot of us may have played in the past. Every time I've spoken to anybody about this, they've said, oh, I used to play that with my gran. For me, this is my granddad. Rest in peace. This is granddad. And I used to play the game of consequences with him when I was a little kid. So for those of you who don't know, it's that idea of you have a bit of paper, you draw a head at the top, you fold it over, you hide it, you move it to the next person, they draw the arms and the body, you fold it over and hide it, and then they draw the bum, I don't know, the bottom half, and then you do the legs, and you do yeah, thank you, Larry. Yes, their legs, not just a bum, that'd be weird. But the idea of their legs, and then they do the shoes, and you unfurl it, and you see this weird, amazing thing. There's lots of different ways of doing it, but what we're going to do in our little, just to sort of test that idea of how everything is connected, is we're going to break out into groups, and I want to see if you can, within 6 degrees of separation, he says, 6 degrees of separation or less, link what you had for lunch with some of these actions that we've come out with for our project. So a lot of these things have come from people and stories that people have done over the spring and summer. And I will see in your groups, choose one person, figure out what they had for lunch, and see how many things you can then link back to one of these actions on the side. So start off with, say, Maggie might have had a bacon sandwich for lunch. Within 6 degrees of separation and 6 steps, can you link that back to creating a pond? And once you do that, move on to the next person. Say, right, Fiona had fruit salad. How can I link that back within 6 degrees of separation to enduring fruit and vegetables when they're in season, for example? So we're just going to sort of do it. And it's a good way of sort of meeting other people within your groups, because we're going to do another breakout group session later when we dig into sort of some of the bigger questions. So with that, I'm going to look expectantly at Lowry and stop sharing every single group and do every single version. But now's the opportunity, if you've got a real juicy one that you want to share, or one that tickled your fancy, then please raise your virtual or real hand now and yeah, share with the group. I was with Hills. There was just 2 of us, and we got a good one as well. So we're happy to sort of share that. Who wants to go first?
I didn't get to join a group, so I'm intrigued to see how you guys got through this.
Who's going to be brave? Ellie.
So Fiona from Bedford was in our group, and her lunch was soup that had been made from the vegetables from her own allotment. So enjoying fruit and vegetables when they're in season. A very short link.
Look at that. What I mean, which was the same. Like Hills was the same. She had a sort of fruit and cheese for. I'm sorry, Hills. I'm sharing. I overshare. I can't help myself. And again, it was like one step straightly to enjoying local fresh produce. Any more steps than just one? Sue.
So I had a nut roast with some roasted spuds and carrots and things, and we did the whole allotment seasonal veg peat-free compost thing as well. But I also realized that I cooked it in a dish that I'd bought at essentially a charity shop, a kind of jumble sale thing. So it was a reused item, a pre-loved item. So we fitted that in with the whole charity shop clothes.
So that's
and then we
like
discovered that loads of people buy stuff in charity shops.
Exactly. So that's not only like you eat one meal with about 5 different ways of awesomeness that are all linked to it as well. Love it. Anyone else? Raise your hands. Well, I'm going to share while you're waiting and being brave. Oh, there you go. Emma, go for it.
Keep going. Unmute. So we had a really interesting one in our group that I thought was quite fantastic. I hope the ladies don't mind me sharing. A lady had an orange, and we thought oranges are from abroad. they've come by air. So it got us thinking about going flight free. But then the lady quite cleverly said, but that makes you think of birds. So why don't you create a pond for the birds? So quite a few degrees of separation.
Yes.
I thought it was quite good.
I like, the more tenuous the better. I like these as well. This is good. I'm going to share our one. So I had to grab something on the go, and I had a sausage roll. But my sausage roll was, I live in Norwich, and it's a local Norfolk pork, and that got us thinking about the idea of buying local produce. However, take it to the next level, and then imagine if you were like saying, well, actually, if everybody went to that idea of those neighborhoods where you could get everything you wanted within a sort of 5 to 10 minute walk or cycle ride, which some cities are trying to do now, then it gets you think about where, if you need to do that, you need to get support from your local council, at which point you would then go to one of your surgeries of your local MP or councillor to figure out how to do that. And then Hills came in at the end and saying, at which at that point you could take said fateful sausage roll for them to enjoy as a bribe. I don't know. I'm not suggesting we should bribe councillors, but yeah, so there you go. Tenuous link of the sausage roll all the way through to going to your MP surgery as well. Last, any more? I love this. More tenuous, the better. Yeah.
Mine's more that my lunch kind of covered a few on the list. So they're like direct links. So I had a pickle on toast. Pickles are kind of like Branscombe pickle, but homemade on toast. So which I grew the cucumber and the cauliflower at my allotment, which I walk to. It's peat free because I'm in Norfolk and the soil is amazing and I don't need to add anything to it. It's really loamy. And so I've been here a year, and through going to my allotment, I've met local councillors, like parish councillors, and I've set up now a regular litter picking walkabout the village and like down all the wildlife sites. So they kind of all link together. And
that is a powerful pickle and cheese on toast.
Yeah, and it all came me growing cucumbers and cauliflower.
Love it. It sounds like a good bit of piccalilli. That sounds like, doesn't it, on toast? My goodness.
Yeah.
And whereabouts in Norfolk are you? Because obviously there's a fellow Norfolkite.
Yeah, so I'm Hockwald, so right next to Wheaton Heath and Lake.
Nice.
So right in the
lovely.
middle of the two. Yeah, so really lucky. Yeah.
Nice. Fabulous. Thank you, Leanne. Any more? Otherwise we'll move on. Like I say, this is a bit of fun. Is it organised fun? I'm looking at faces. People, I think generally you enjoy yourself. It's fine. Okay, it's good. Raise your hand. I can't see anybody else. Okie doke. Right. Well, thank you for that. That was just get us into the sort of like breakout room spirit of things. Yeah, we've been talking about this in our project team. So the likes of Isabel, do you want to give us a wave? There you go. The likes of Isabel from our lovely sort of teammates at Behaviour Change and ourselves at the RSPB and the project team have been talking about this whole idea of like, actually everything in the world is connected, and it kind of works really nicely, even if you're talking about your cheese and pickle on toast and whatever you had for lunch. It works really nicely. So what we're going to do for the rest of this session is start digging into the idea of that idea of connectedness. So with I should have my chat open as well and those sort of things. So what I'm going to do now is just go back to sharing my screen. I think my granddad would be quite proud of where I've got to in my life. Oh dear. Yeah, so we're looking at the sort of moving on to the next thing is, so not only is the sort of natural world totally, completely connected in many different ways, and our part within it as human beings, and the fact that actually we as as humans are connected to one another in many, many different ways as well. So what we're going to start doing now is think about how you as individuals or people generally within their sort of neighborhoods and where they live, how they can start making those connections with other people with where they live, either in a sort of geographical place or actually like we are today in a kind of like on an online community space. And how can we actually start inspiring others to start taking action for nature as well. So with that in mind, we're going to have a good opportunity to start thinking about this sort of big old question. Because, yeah, as it says, there are many different ways that we can inspire people to take meaningful actions for nature. And instead of just sort of imparting knowledge, like a lot of people have been doing over the last many, many decades, what are the different ways that we can actually inspire people and motivate people to possibly take their first step? So it could be that the people that we want to be talking to are taking action for the first time, or actually, like a lot of you guys are already doing some really cool stuff already. How can we either help you maintain what you're doing, or actually, how can we start doing something different? Because, you know, there's always opportunities of doing things differently and new things as well. So that's the sort of we're going to sort of really get into. And we've got an opportunity to sort of go back into our breakout groups and start digging into these sort of questions. And then we'll have an opportunity at the end, sort of feedback a lot of the responses that you've got in your groups. And we'll do that in a sort of snazzy way where you can annotate actually on your screen, on your computer, and we'll capture that and all the sort of feedback that you're giving. So when you do that in your breakout groups, if you can have somebody who can be sort of scribbling some notes down, and then when we come back as a big group together, you'll be able to.
Yes, yeah, we did.
About fab. Okay. So I'm going to ask. First of all, you guys can just write. You don't have to wait until your group to sort of feedback. You guys can start writing now. But for this particular question, so what are the motivations that encourage people to take the first step? So which group wants to go first? And otherwise, and actually talk through some of your ideas. Otherwise, you can just start putting stuff up as well. Does a group want to sort of start sharing some of their ideas around motivations?
Well, I can maybe share my kind of barrier to motivation. I can't figure out how to add anything.
Well, should we try and do it for you, Antoinette?
Yeah.
This is where I'm. Maybe I don't know, Emma. You're better at this than me. Do you want to I'm really, really bad at multitasking, so I probably can't talk at the same time. But and Antoinette, over to you.
Everybody seems to know exactly what they're doing. This is like the story of my life. Everybody seems to know exactly what they're doing, except me. This is also my barrier to green spaces because I don't have a green finger. I can't figure out how to add.
So basically, at the top of your screen, if you go up to the top, it should say View Options, and then if you click on the little down arrow, and it says it says Zoom ratio, hide video panel, annotate. So if you click on annotate, and then
yes, I've got a toolbar.
That's it. And then you click on text, and then you can shout away. But while we've got you, Antoinette, okay. Have you got anything to share as far as motivations that you think that encourage people to take their first step?
To be quite honest, if somebody's already kind of got it up there, the whole play that you can maybe play and not be afraid of kind of making mistakes, that it's kind of more of a bit of an adventure rather than, you know, something that needs to be perfect from the beginning.
Yeah, love it. That whole idea of like, got to do perfect before you do it. It's like, make it fun, make it enjoyable, have a go, see what you reckon. Have you had experience of that, Antoinette, yourself?
Well, I just notice or have noticed, you know, different barriers to it, and I know sometimes I would stop myself maybe because you kind of you maybe think of yourself as not being that type of person, or that certain things aren't for you before sometimes you try it, and sometimes you have to try it to really see if it is, you know, stuff that you like. As I say, I don't feel that I'm a gardener, but I do garden. I
Yeah.
do collect things in nature, and I do get out in nature and do things in nature, but I don't actually feel or think of myself as a nature person.
Yeah, I get you. I get you. Have you? I don't know what your if you've got a garden, what it might be like, but I've got that sort of what I call my death bed, which basically is where I put all my plants that I've killed, and I kind of just leave them there to slowly die.
Okay.
I'm not green fingered at all. So yeah, just like have a go, isn't it? Have a go and get that confidence after it. That's great.
That's a compost heap, Adam.
Oh, is that what it is? That's what I should call it, not my deathbed. Exactly. Thank you, Antoinette. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll sort of move on to see if anyone else got anything to add. Look, so much stuff. I love it. Who else wants to share some of the things that they've put up there? I can't. If you're waving frantically, I can't tell. So you might have to just shout out.
Yeah, I was going to say, you just need to unmute yourself if you'd like to share. Everyone's just so busy adding notes.
Yeah.
That is a whole load of notes. That's amazing.
Love it.
And you may notice don't be offended if I move your stuff. It's just so that we can make sure everyone can see all the different points.
Yeah. So, well,
Space. Creating space for people to kind of come in. That's a motivation. Sometimes people don't always create space or have people, you know, see the accessibility of things around them.
yeah.
Yeah, we had something a bit like that on having the opportunity, so having the time and the access to places, and I guess feeling welcome in those places as well.
Yeah. So Sue, when you were talking about different places, is that kind of physical, places within communities,
green spaces, and having time to on the inclination to explore. So I think we were talking a bit about lockdown and what had changed during lockdown, and people were saying that they thought that people had actually had time, and because we were restricted in terms of how far we could travel, people were exploring where they lived more than they had before, and that was quite interesting, and it kind of made them think or feel a bit differently about the place where they lived.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean that's come out again in the research of that idea of people kind of like when we all had that 1 hour to go out and about and do things, then that hour was actually, you couldn't go very far within that hour if you were walking, and actually it's like you've kind of forced people to find out what they do have on their doorstep, isn't it? So that's great. Thank you, Sue. Anybody else? Conscious of time, and I know we got to the other question as well. This is a lot of very cool stuff. My goodness, this is worked really well, Larry, isn't it?
I'm very impressed. I thought everyone would be too scared to write on this, but I'm very impressed that everyone just went wild on it.
Exactly. Anybody who's struggled with this kind of technology, who just wants to sort of like tell us, and we'll pop it up there for you.
Yeah, definitely. Do shout, as Adam said. We can't see you properly. We can't see everybody at the moment. I think that might be it for this one.
Okie doke. Right. In which case,
I'm going to give that a quick save. I'm going to stop sharing that one and then move on to the next one. Straight on to the next one. So same again. You're all welcome to click on the view box and annotate again. So how can you inspire community to act in nature was the second side of the question.
Yeah. So, and again, you could do it so it's your virtual community. If you've got a virtual community of like-minded people around a particular subject or a particular, or your different backgrounds, or it might actually be a sort of your actual physical neighborhood community where you live. So I don't know whether I'm going to sort of pick on my group with Hills and Kalpana, but we have some really. I don't know whether either of you two want to sort of share some of your thoughts. Otherwise, I might do it. Might sort of share some of it. No. Maybe
This is the only downside. Everyone's like, I can't talk, I'm writing.
Yeah, so I'm busy, Adam. Come on, jeez, what are you doing? But if I'll tell you a bit of a Kalpana, I hope you don't mind if I sort of share your story as well. So Kalpana is lives in Barry in South Wales, and comes from a BAME community. And she was saying, actually, she's one of the few people on this call that actually is from a BAME community and is really interested in figuring out how to take her community out. And she's been taking people out to the from her community out to the Brecon Beacons, so they can actually enjoy the beautiful national park that is the Brecon Beacons, and get people out and about. And it was really interesting talking about all the different sorts of barriers that people have. And they were saying that actually from India, where Kalpana's from, a lot of people sort of worry about going out into the woods and stuff because there's lots of sort of insects and bugs and things that can actually bite you and do you some damage. And a lot of people have that same perception going out to the great outdoors in the UK. But actually, what was really interesting is when you start looking at why they do go out to the places like the Brecons. Was that whole idea? First of all, things they want to sort of integrate with your local community, so you get a sense of actually integrating. But I feel it's a chance of actually helping their communities, helping their children feeling part of the communities that they're now in, and sort of motivating people to do it by using the sort of seniors. I hope Kalpana, you don't mind me. That's, I think you called yourself seniors within the community, to sort of inspire sort of younger people and families to come out with them. And that whole idea of sort of education and sort of learning skills when you do go out into nature, well then, feeling that sense of getting new skills and new knowledge, and even getting like when in doubt, get a certificate or a badge. That's what I always say. And by doing that, you might actually inspire more people to go out, get connected with the natural world, and then there's more likelihood to actually then take action as well. So I thought that was a really fascinating story, and we're going to see if we can help Kalpana out about doing that more. So hopefully that's giving you some inspiration. But anybody want to share their thoughts if you haven't done so already?
Very well summarized, Adam. Please send me a copy. Thank you. Very well.
No, thank you, Kalpana. You inspired me. It's brilliant.
So I lead natural mindfulness walks. I'm a natural mindfulness guide. So the idea is that people, are able to come out with me to a natural space, and we explore the natural world using all of our senses. And then, that definitely encourages connection with nature for those that come to the walks. And a lot of them then go on to wanting to actively take part in looking after their local environment, which is lovely. I'm also a forest schools leader as well, and I work with young people, 4 to 24-year-olds, where we do wild wellbeing sessions, forest school sessions. So getting young people out, vulnerable young adults out into nature, and exactly what you've just been describing. They're learning new tools. We might do bushcraft sessions, we might be doing ID skills another day, we might be creating some habitat for wildlife, and then they go back, and then it spreads through the community. They're inspired on their visits and their sessions with us, and then they take that back to their own community and their own families and carers. So it's really lovely, really nice to see, especially when they send you photos and emails of what they've been doing.
Yeah. Oh, how lovely. And again, this is what Emma and I and the sort of wider sort of engagement team that we have at the RSPB is that kind of like theory of like get people out there into the natural world, get connected to sort of nature, and then when you're out there, there's a lot more likelihood of them people thinking actually this is important. They can see the benefits of it, whether it's from well-being or actually just learning new things, or just being loving and finding out about all the sort of beasties and birds and plants and stuff. And it's a lot more likelihood to then start taking action as well. And you have to ask the likes of Sue in Cardiff, and you can do that in urban environments as well as sort of the rural idyll that is Norfolk as well. So
yeah, we get a lot of like families coming out from urban environments, and it's what is really lovely is when it's like the parents and the carers, it's the adults, and even the staff, the professionals that come with them, and we might just do cloud gazing, like, or just looking up, tree gazing. So we're all laying on our backs, just watching the trees, listening to the winds, and then it's them then saying, I haven't done that since I was a child. I'm going to make time now to go and do more of this, and just reconnecting as well is just really wonderful. It's really lovely. Just little simple activities that we do. Doesn't need to be anything big or amazing or innovative. Just going back to our childhood sometimes can be really inspirational.
Take it back, keep it simple, and taking the time. That's a big thing that we keep hearing back as well, is taking the time. Has anyone got any final sort of comments on how individual action can then inspire kind of wider community action? Has anyone got any good examples of that? Whereas like they did something which then sort of inspired a whole bunch of other people within their community to start doing either a similar or like-minded sort of stuff.
I started a community garden by mistake once.
Love it.
Because I'd been made redundant, and in a kind of mad scrabble of, oh my God, how am I going to make some money? I thought, well, I can grow stuff, so I'll do some gardening. So I got onto Nextdoor, the kind of social network for neighborhoods, and I had a look through the chats on Nextdoor, and I could see that quite a lot of people were asking garden related questions. So I answered them and sort of said, oh, how about we start a little group on here, and people can ask gardening questions, and anyone who knows about gardening can share answers, and that stuff. And then somebody posted back, great idea, if you want to set up a garden group, you can use our community centre, because we're looking to start a community garden. And I said, okay, I wasn't thinking of a face-to-face thing, but okay, let's do that. And so we all met at this community centre, and it turned out everyone wanted to be involved in this community garden, and didn't really know much about gardening, but wanted to have a go. And there were a couple of people there who had some skills. So I got some paper out, and we drew a picture of what we wanted to do on the site, and it happened, and it's still going, and people are just, it's just happened. And they've made a pollinator garden, and they've got an allotment garden, and now they're making a little woodland walk, and I've got my wildflower meadow there and my bee hotel, and it's just like totally by accident, but just because people had been thinking individually, oh, I'd really like to know more about that, or I'd like to have a go at that. And actually the thing that they enjoy, everything stops at 11 o'clock for a cup of tea and a biscuit and a chat. And there's always a good half an hour of a cup of tea and chat and biscuits. So it's kind of, it's some people just like, they've found friends and they get together and with people they like, and they do some nice stuff outdoors, and they learn some stuff, and it's amazing.
Love it. And sometimes it just goes to show that it's like, if you plan stuff too much, it'll never happen. Sometimes you need to have a sort of like kick up the bum to actually go and do stuff, and then all of a sudden gets a life of its own, which is amazing. That's great. Thanks, Sue. I'm conscious of time, so I think, Laurie, we're good. Should we do super screen grab? And then we're good. Fabulous.
That was amazing. I liked how many things, some of them were repeating, but it was like connections, showing what you're doing, leading by example. That was really inspiring to see.
Yeah, love it. Okay, great. So we've only got a few minutes left. So what I'm going to do, and that's all really, really, really helpful stuff. And like I said, it was all about hearing your stories and what's relevant to you, and kind of like sharing that. We're gonna take that back, and that's actually going to help us when we're sort of working on this project throughout the autumn and winter, and then through to spring, when we're going to have a big reveal of this product that hopefully will help more people to start taking action. So you'll hopefully start seeing things when you see that in sort of February, March time, of things that sound a little bit familiar about some of those things that you've just mentioned as well. So yeah, a big thank you. What I'll do is I'll finish up by sharing. There we go. Where are we? Yeah, so just to sort of finish up really, it all boils down to the fact that regardless of the different sorts of actions that you take, and whether it's your campaigning on the streets in a socially distanced way, or you're shopping in, in a sustainable manner, whether you're campaigning, whether you're giving nature a home in your back gardens or in your local community green spaces, all of those actions bring us all together because we're all trying to do the right thing for ourselves, our community, and the planet. But also, let's not forget that actually the entire planet is all interconnected, and us as humans do not sit on the outside of what we're doing. And again, it was David Attenborough in his documentary that said we need to start thinking of ourselves as the fact that we are a part of nature. We're not sitting on the periphery looking in on it as it slowly sort of disappears from our lives. So we are completely connected to the natural world, and sometimes we just need a bit of a reminder of that. So yeah, just to sort of finish up by saying there's lots of great stuff we're looking at. We are actually looking for some sort of great stories of different things that people are doing. So do please share with us. We'll leave the details of how you can get in contact with Emma and myself. Laurie will give you a bit of an idea of sort of follow up on that as well. But there's some really great stuff out there, and these are some of the guys who I've been sort of either stalking or I've actually met through the Eden Project communities as well, like the lovely Mia in Lincoln with her Art Ninjas, and the guys at Toast doing amazing beer made out of leftover bread, the community fridges from Hubbub. There's some really great stuff, but actually all of the stuff that you guys are doing are equally as valid as super stories that we'd love to hear about. So with that in mind, and Kalpana, this is for you in particular as well. This is the email that you can get hold of us on. So community@rspb.org.uk. So do give Emma and I a shout on that. And then again, if you feel like wanting to be inspired, do go and have a look at that